Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted each Tuesday during the season. The huddle features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. We first start off with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. So let's meet them. A WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball reports. Also hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked On USC. That's Mark Culkin. The editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, columnist, national recruiting guru, producer, and moderator of WeAreSC's Fridays Four Downs video show and Five Things video show as well, which is posted on YouTube and WeAreSC.com after each and every USC football home and away game. He's a graduate of USC. That's Eric McKinney, a former William Jewell College defensive back and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular WeAreSC.com column Musings with Arledge and the well-received Musings with Arledge Solo Edition video. He's a graduate of the USC Law School. That's Chris Arledge. And a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays, the Obvious and Not So Obvious. From the press box, IMHO Sunday, the WeAreSC.com travel guide, and an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, Greg Katz. Folks, if you enjoyed the WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, we thank you and strongly encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube, click on the like and red subscriber buttons. It's greatly appreciated. And you can also listen to Inside the Trojans Huddle on most available podcast sites. And friends, speaking of WeAreSC.com, we're offering a new deal for you YouTube viewers, 2 months of access to WeAreSC for just $1 when you use USC code USC1 when you sign up. That's USC code USC.1 when signing up. You won't want to miss the USC football website that really does tell it like it is. All right, let's kick this thing off. Panel, here we go. Like it or not, release the Kraken. Your overall thoughts, impressions, and comments regarding UCLA's 38-20 dominance over the Trojans. The good, the bad, the ugly. Who or what was the key to the game? Let's start off, as always, with our leadoff hitter, Mark Culkin. Fire away.
Well, that game sucked. There's really no other way to describe it. It's one thing to get your rear end handed to you. That happens. If we've played sports, we've all experienced it at least once in our life. But to go out there with the lack of energy, understanding that you're playing against your rival, and just a total laissez-faire attitude, and to kind of just accept what's happening, that was the impression I got watching that game. Whether or not that's the actual case doesn't matter. Perception is my reality. And what I watched was a team that was uninspired, unprepared, and it was on the offense. We knew that the defense was a challenge all year long. But to see the offense just so flat, and again, to come out against your rival and to turn the ball over, and that was the key to the game. Turnovers, 3 of them. That and the fact that UCLA or USC churned out 3 yards net rushing. Just a very uninspiring game. There's not a lot I want to say about this because there's nothing good about it. And I really don't want to come down too hard on the players, but that coaching staff, the ones that remain after this season, they got a big challenge ahead of them because whatever happened last year, 11 wins, obviously, they stumbled into that somehow. Lincoln Riley kept saying, hey, we're close. We're this close. If he plays here, if he plays there. I've heard Eric say it before. A few plays here, a few plays there. We're not even 500 team. So you go from 6-0 to start the season to 7-5 a finish. I think I heard a former ex-coach say it's time to look under the hood. There's some big-time problems. This was a setback season for USC. You knew you had to change the defensive coordinator. You didn't do it until it was too late. And then you're struggling to get to the finish line. And in between then, you're trying to recruit to make your product better because you don't want 2022 to be your worst roster ever. And right now, with everything that's kind of piled up, Lincoln Riley's got a big challenge ahead of him. You got to find a defensive coordinator. You got to fill out this 2024 recruiting class, and then you got to go right back into the transfer portal, where you hope that you can get people to buy in and understand that when USC plays Notre Dame and UCLA, you have to be ready to play. You can't have your two worst performances as a team in those games. So I'm done.
Mark, just a quick question for the record. Was there a key that you thought happened in the USC UCLA game for you?
Was there a key?
A key to the game? Or was there a moment that kind of set everything off?
Get to the fact that, and we know USC's defense was not good, but that they allowed UCLA to convert 13 out of 20 third down opportunities. And I hate to point the finger at an individual player, but that fumble by Marshawn Lloyd was it was a killer. I mean, it was a dagger. So those to me, those are the two keys.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric, fire away.
I mean, about that specific game, a lot of the same things, right? You can't no-show in the first quarter against UCLA. And I know that USC talked all season about what their goals were, and they wanted to win a national championship, and they wanted to play in the Pac-12 championship game, and they wanted to show what they could do against the second half of that schedule. And when that gets taken away, or when you lose it, doesn't get taken away, when you lose it, when you fail to get to that point, I understand that maybe it's tough to still play with that same drive, but you do it. You figure out how to do it if you're going to play at this level. And to absolutely no-show early against UCLA can't happen for a USC team. Just can't happen. And you looked at it, the defense was put up against it early on. UCLA didn't have a scoring drive in the first half that needed to go more than 50 plays. USC's first 4 possessions, downs of 3 and out, to a 2-play drive that was a fumble and a 2-play drive that was an interception. And so the defense had no chance in the first half and still held a bit. And then the second half, here's a little bit more of the USC defense that we've shown up, or that we've seen this season. It was the perfect, and I say perfect not being serious, but it was the perfect encapsulation of everything this season was for USC. You had issues on special teams with penalties. You had fumbles everywhere all the time, which is what this team did all season offensively. You were so good at ball control and turnovers last year. And we heard during last season too from people, hey, turnovers have a way of evening themselves out, and it's really more of a 50-50 split over the years. That came home this year. So the defensive breakdowns where UCLA receivers are wide open catching touchdown passes, the inability to run the ball and be a tough team when the other team is saying, let's be tough, let's see who wins the ground game in this one, and USC can't really respond there. And just what we've seen all year, where they couldn't get all 3 areas playing at the same time. You had a 99-yard 7-play offensive drive that looks pretty good, and then the defense kind of goes in the tank. The offense can't get things going, and you look back, and I know we want to talk this game, but it just was the whole season. I think you had one half of good football this year, and that was the first half against Stanford. You can't really even say the full first half against Colorado because you blew up at the end of the first half. I think in 12 games, you played one half of good football, and against UCLA with that disjointed stop-start, couldn't get anything done. That's what we saw. That was the team you had to expect this year.
Eric, same question that I asked Mark. Was there a key in this game to you that kind of got the ball rolling, so to speak, in a bad direction? A moment?
I talked about it when we did 5 things right after, there were 2, and it was right at the beginning of the game and right at the beginning of the second half. I think USC missing that 4th down conversion early and then giving up a touchdown right away set the tone for the game. And then that 3-play sequence where you give up a touchdown and then you fumble the ball and then you give up another touchdown right after that, or sorry, on the return. Yeah. If that's all you saw from the game, you know how this one went.
So, Chris, you wrote a great column using Zarlich about this game. Chime in, buddy.
Well, look, UCLA was by far the more physical, tougher football team. That should never be true, right? It should never be true. UCLA is not exactly known as a physical program. And they're probably, they've been better up front on the offensive line with Chip Kelly, I suppose, than USC has been recently. But UCLA shouldn't push USC around, and USC went out and got pushed around. The offensive line was appalling, right? I mean, it was appalling. The secondary, appalling. The turnovers, appalling. Didn't love the place kicking. I mean, missed field goals and kicking the ball out of bounds. That's not great. I didn't love the kickoff return team, which early in the year we thought, well, this is a strength because USC has a spectacular returner, which is true. But either USC only plays 4 guys on their kickoff return team, or most of the guys on the kickoff return team don't block anybody. But there's a good chance that at least one of the guys on that team will hold somebody, which is why USC ends up starting at the 7 just about all the time. Branch will take the ball and he'll run sideways and he'll get tackled around the 13, and then they'll march it half the distance to the goal. I mean, it's just, this was a bad game from a bad football team. They've been a bad football team all year, right? I mean, they had some blowouts early against terrible teams, but this is a team that's beaten one decent opponent all year, and that was Arizona. And Arizona's pretty good, and they beat Arizona. Other than that, they can't beat anybody. 7th, 8th best team in the conference. I mean, what do you want me to say about that? That's not exactly what people expected this year. And I will point out that when Chip Kelly had a bad defense, and he did, he's had a few of them over the years, but he had a bad defense. He went out and found somebody and found some guys in the transfer portal, and they immediately turned around that defense. USC brought back Alex Grinch and continued to play just horrific football all year. By the way, props to the interim DCs. At least they decided to try to stop the run. It didn't always work. But as opposed to the Alex Grinch scheme of just leaving giant gaps and letting offensive linemen get to the second level so they can immediately block your secondary guys, who are the only guys in a position to make a tackle on an outside running play, I'll take more guys in the box. So I appreciate that, but it's really the only thing I appreciated. It was an ugly, ugly affair, and I don't ever want to relive it.
Did you
Chris,
watch?
same question to you. Excuse me, Mark. Same question to you. Was there a moment when you watched the game you say, all right, this is not going to be good? A key moment, so to speak.
Yeah, from the first time the offensive line went out on the field. I mean, they were unable to block anybody in the run game all game. They didn't block particularly well in the pass game, although Caleb can run around a little bit. But no, I mean, they were getting dominated from the get-go. And when you saw that, you realized, okay, we got big problems, because the defense is going to have its struggles. The offense has to play. So I think that, I mean, the first series, when you watch the offensive line go out there and just get stuffed, you think, okay, we might be in trouble here. Turns out we were in trouble.
Yeah, and I'm going to take everything that you guys mentioned. And I'm going to just quickly just say that the key for me was the decision, which I thought was really stupid, although a game shouldn't be based that early in the game on making a questionable call on offense. But in my opinion, when Riley decided he was going to go for it with 4th and 2 in his own territory, why would you do that at this point? Why would you even give UCLA an opportunity to get excited, which they did, and they got stuffed. We got stuffed. And then they march it down, as Eric pointed out, a short distance and scored. And all of a sudden you just knew, at least I felt, that it was going to be a bad possibility in this game. Now, the other points that I wanted to make were, I don't think this team was up to play for a couple of reasons. One is that there are so many players from out of the area that do not understand USC, and they don't have the passion for it that maybe some of the local guys had. But when you look at the amount of transfers from other schools, how could they? How could they? You know, even Lincoln Riley's, you know, when he was asked this question before he started coaching, they say, well, you ready for SC UCLA? And he brought up, you know, Oklahoma and Texas. And then he did say that, you know, where else do you have two schools so closely located in the same city? So, you know, he kind of got it, but I don't think the players that played really understood the passion of it, that even when all else fails, there's always SC versus UCLA. They didn't get it. Now, does that mean that they weren't prepared to play in the terms of the coaches weren't emphasizing it? Of course they were emphasizing it. Even if you didn't mean it, you would emphasize it to your players. And I felt that had a real crucial effect on just the attitude. And it goes back to, I think, Chris's point about physicality. At worst, you know, how many times when I was in high school, did my high school team lose? But then they'd say, yeah, well, we kicked the crap out of them besides the scoreboard. Well, okay, couldn't you have just physically dominated UCLA even if you lost? There was no physical domination. There was no real head snapping, just the same old, same old. So the fact that they weren't ready to play was probably the most disappointing part of it. And I tell you what, I think it filtered up into the press box. I think a lot of us were sitting there going, wow, I've seen more excitement in the spring game. And, you know, that is a bad commentary. So I'm going to get rid of the UCLA game as quickly as I can. So let's move on here. Fans, ever been caught in a last-minute ticket frenzy? The stress, uncertainty, it's crunch time. You don't need it. But guess what? There's a game-changing solution. It's called Game Time. Imagine this: effortless ticket buying for all your favorite sports, music, comedy, theater events. No more frantic searches. Game Time is your ultimate ticket buddy. Sure sounds good to me. Want perks? Well, how about incredible deals on last-minute tickets and a rock-solid best price guarantee? Say goodbye to ticket anxiety and hello to the sheer joy of being in the moment. The Trojans' regular season has been completed, and now they await their bowl assignment, which will be announced in the near future. Once that bowl destination has been established, check out Game Time for the best values for the Trojans bowl game. Reminder, you can also check out Game Time for the best ticket values for USC basketball games at the Galen Center. Check out Game Time tickets after watching or listening to today's Inside the Trojans Huddle. And aside from USC tickets, you can also head to Game Time for Rams, Chargers, Lakers, Clippers, tickets to all your favorite LA teams, and don't forget those concerts as well. Flash deals, easy access, seat viewing images, unbeatable best prices, guarantees, event protection. Game Time has it all, from sports to rock concerts. So here's the deal. Head to gametime.co. That's gametime.co. That's co, not .com. And download the app, create an account, use code Trojans for $20 off your first purchase. Ready to dive in? As for buying tickets, as easy as tapping on your phone. Tickets are sent straight to your phone. Again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Trojans for $20 off. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code Trojans for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, let's head to the second quarter, and this one is going to get, well, how shall I put it? In your face. There's a tremendous firestorm from both the media scrutiny and fan reaction, not just to the result of the UCLA game, but the Trojans finishing the regular season a shocking 7-5 that includes losing 5 of the last 6 games. All right, panel, do you share Coach Riley's optimism that the Trojans are just a few tweaks away, both in coaching and personnel, from the defense significantly taking a major step forward? And do you believe that Lincoln Riley is now on the hot seat? Chris?
Let me start with the second question first. Lincoln Riley is not on the hot seat. He is not going to get fired. He is not he is not in risk of being fired at any time in the next few years, nor should he be. Okay, let's talk about the tweaks. That was the worst defense in USC history. I mean, statistically, it was. And if you didn't know that they gave up more points than any other defense in history, all you'd have to do is watch, and you see that these are guys that can't do anything right. I mean, it was grim every week. We know that, and I've talked about it many times. I don't want to belabor it, but if you can't rush the passer and you can't stop the run and you can't cover people and you can't tackle and you can't line up, it's not entirely clear what you're doing out there. And that's the situation for the defense this year. USC needs a major influx in talent, and USC obviously needs a new coaching staff. I don't know that it's just a defensive coordinator, although that's obviously a major hire. But I don't know. I mean, I watched those position groups play, and it was hard to get excited about what we were seeing. So no, USC is not close defensively. Offensively, that may be the case. Meaning, offensively, you grow some, you get another year experience for the offensive lineman they recruited. Maybe you can find a guy in the transfer portal. You can say, okay, with a good offensive line, I think USC's offense is going to score a lot of points, and that's true. They will. But defensively, no, it was a disaster. It was a grease fire at all three levels. I don't know how else to describe it. It was really sad to watch. And good news is it can be turned around quickly. Look what happened with UCLA, right? 1 year. 1 year, they hired a guy I'd never heard of. His dad was not an O-line coach, but his dad was a coach. And they hire him, and he comes in, and immediately they start playing good defense. So it can be done, but they need to do it because they were a long way from decent this year.
Mark, you've been following USC a long time. The question, is this a case of like quick fix? Is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat? How do you feel about it?
So as far as the hot seat question, I agree with Chris. He's not going to get fired next year. He's not going to get fired after this offseason either. With that said, I think he's the seat warmer in the car is probably going to be on auto and on. So he's got another year to show dramatic development with the program. Like I said, this was a setback season. Washington had a first-year coach last year. Oregon had a first-year coach last year. Everybody's using the transfer portal. Those two teams took steps and developed. USC didn't. So to that point again, Lincoln Riley is not on the hot seat, but I think it's getting a little bit warm, and he's got to show some improvement. And it's not just on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's, like Chris said, it's across the board. Watching Chip Kelly coach an offense, even with inferior talent, he knows how to use what he has. So if he doesn't have a quarterback, well, he's going to design plays, and he's going to use the clock to his advantage. That's the biggest thing that Lincoln Riley can learn how to do. He knows how to call a game, but I don't think he knows how to call a game, if you understand the difference when I'm emphasizing. When your quarterback is constantly looking over to the sideline and that play clock is getting down to 5, 4, 3, 2, clap, go, you're not running tempo. When USC runs tempo on offense, they are hard to stop. So, again, he's not on the hot seat. They're more than a few tweaks away. They're not close. The bottom line is get a new defensive coordinator, get a new scheme. When you go to the transfer portal, which you have to do again, you need to be sure. You cannot miss on as many players as you missed. Whether or not they show improvement next year, who knows? But, if we're going to be specific, you look at a player like Anthony Lucas. We heard from the spring through the offseason into the beginning of fall camp. This dude is a dude. Watch what he's going to do. I don't think he played in the last game. I don't know if he played in the game before the last game. So if you're counting on these players to come in and be an impact, you've got to be better evaluators. It starts with the players. It starts with your coaches. Next year, he will be on the hot seat if they look anything close to like what they did this year. USC fans aren't going to stand for it. Even if the buyout is $100 trillion, they are tired of watching mediocre football And knowing, like you said, Greg and Chris and Eric, you could turn this around in a year. UCLA went out and got a 34-year-old defensive coordinator. Washington went out and got a head coach, Kalen DeBoer. They haven't lost yet this year. They know how to win close, tight games. Oregon went out and got a young, defensive-minded head coach. We made fun of him, but he's got his team playing up to par right now. USC went out and got a young head coach last year as well. Lincoln Riley's running in third place compared to Kalen DeBoer and Dan Lanning.
All right, Editor-in-Chief, Eric McKinney.
So I think Lincoln said, some tweaks and that stuff during the season. What he said after UCLA was admittedly significantly different. What he said after UCLA, there's obviously still clearly a lot of work to do. So he's tossed a little bit of we're right there. And he can't really help himself from going back and thinking about the potential blocked field goal at Utah, which if your whole game plan is let's block a field goal at the end against a team that's typically really good on special teams, that's not the way to win that game. So there are a few plays. If Caleb Williams hits Lake McCree over the middle early against Notre Dame, does that game play out differently? Maybe, but maybe they lose by 7 fewer points, or maybe something else happens and it's the exact same score. What's more significant is that you're 2 pretty bad 2-point conversion attempts away from not going to a bowl game this year, from being 5-7 if you lose to Arizona and lose to Cal. That is we're a couple plays away from being that kind of team. And again, I give him a little credit because he did say, look, if those plays go differently and USC beats Utah and some of the Washington stuff happens and you post that big win over Washington, you feel different about the season on the surface, but deep down in your program's bones, you're still the same. You're still the same program. And I think missing on those plays tells you a lot about what you are as a team and a program. And you're a team and a program that can't make those plays right now. So yes, this offseason is significant. As far as the hot seat, he's on the fans' hot seat. That they can't fire him, but he's absolutely there right now with what you hear. Now, being on the athletic director's hot seat and that sort of stuff, no, not yet. Whenever you're the coach of a program, you get to make a couple big changes, which they're going to do at defensive coordinator. But I think it's more than just bringing a guy in and saying, okay, you run the defense and I'll keep running the offense. You got to be the head coach of the whole team. You got to be the head coach of the defense too. And you got to put the work in on that side and be there for those guys. And I'm not saying he doesn't have a connection with the defense, but there's a feeling. Oregon has a really good offense this year. The feeling is Dan Lanning is in tune with that defense. The feeling at Oregon, and when you see that game, there's a different feel when your program is all in defensively. Chip Kelly is not a defensive coach. What D'Anton Lynn has done at UCLA this year has made it feel like that is a defensive first team. And that's what you want to be at USC. And yes, you can do it in one off season. And yes, clearly you can get there with an offensive minded head coach. So no, they're not a few tweaks away. It's a top down look at the entire program this offseason, and you need major changes. You can't, whatever you did last offseason, you need to take that to-do list and turn it upside down and do it all in reverse to be able to take that step forward that you really want to take. Because people are going to talk about the Big Ten schedule and, next year's loaded. I don't know if next year's schedule is harder than what they had this year, but you do have to say you got to 11 wins in 2022 because you played a cakewalk schedule compared to what you got this year. If those schedules are flipped, that 2022 season doesn't look like what it did. So that being kind of a fool's gold year maybe led you into we're not that far away and we can kind of not coast, but keep it on the same trajectory going into 2023. And you hope that this is just a massive shakeup. And now no, you can't do that. You've got a hard turn left or right or something, but get out of that rut that you're in right now.
Don't look at this game film.
When all else fails, look at the game. We got to check the game film. All right, guys. Honestly speaking, he is on the hot seat. More in terms of what Mark mentioned. I think he is on the hot seat. Perception-wise, he's certainly on the hot seat by fans, many media. They're saying maybe he's not quite the coach that we thought he was. When he, before he got to USC, Oklahoma fans would say, we knew this was coming. I think that Lincoln Riley, if I had to give him a grade for this year, he gets an F. Because he had one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in college football, who was surrounded by a horse blank defense, a horrible offensive line. He was scrambling. There's nothing more that Caleb Williams could do, which added to the pressure of him executing every single play. I think that Lincoln Riley has hung himself with his comments like, we got to get back to how we were playing in the first 6 games. You played that way because you played dog meat schools, Nevada, San Jose State. I mean, that was old Clay Helton's deal when he knew he was going to play the lower echelon of the Pac-12 in November. I think we're really going to be good, and I think we're going to develop on offense in November. Of course you were, Clay. You were going to play the worst teams in the Pac-12. So to me, that's ridiculous. I think next year is going to be a really challenging season. You're taking Michigan, Penn State, at Washington, along with all the other challenges, LSU. It's going to be a really tough season without a Caleb Williams. I don't know whether they can make a U-turn on the transfer portal. I think in certain areas it works. I think when you're developing an offensive line, it has to come from high school recruits for the most part. Develop a line if you need to insert one guy in there, but there's a reason guys are in the transfer portal. Okay. Caleb Williams is an exception to the rule. Most of these guys are Anthony Lucas, since you brought up the name. 5-star guy, didn't do much at Texas A&M, really didn't do much at USC, although the offensive line or defensive line coach, Sean Newis says, he's going to be a very special player. Well, I'm waiting to see what a special player looks like. But all in all, Lincoln Riley hung by his own quotes that are and to come out with a comment during the season like, to the untrained eye. I'll tell you what, Eric McKinney doesn't have an untrained eye. Chris Arledge doesn't have an untrained eye. Mark Culkin doesn't have an untrained guy, a trained eye. It's those type of comments. What he should say? He should simply say, I acknowledge that what you are all seeing is what is taking place. We're going to try to fix it the best we can and just leave it there. Don't sit there and make kind of a snarky comment like the untrained eye. That stuff is going to come back to bite you over and over again. For me personally, I feel like we've been down this road before with if it's not Lincoln Riley, it's Clay Helton. And we can make all the comments we want about Clay Helton, but if you look at the record of the two and some of the similarities, although I think Lincoln Riley's a better coach than Clay Helton, let's not make any mix up on that. It's still the bottom line. What is your record? What are you doing? I think Lincoln Riley's got such a massive overhaul, and I'll end it with this. His credibility right now, and especially when it comes to recruiting, this comment that he made about, we're going to recruit nationally and, sure, we're going to recruit California, but at the end of the day, if we win the national title, people aren't going to care where they're from. Guess what, Lincoln? You're not going to win a national title if you don't start off with your base area of recruiting, Southern California, because when guys are leaving power programs, and we all know who they are in Southern California, and they're not coming to USC, Lincoln, you got a big problem, and that's your credibility. So you got a lot of work to do. I hope you can accomplish it. I really do. But I'll tell you what, I don't have a lot of confidence right now that he's going to be able to do that. I'd love for him to prove me wrong, But right now, I'm not feeling it with him. I'll be honest with you. So, on that negative note, a reminder for USC football fans: following the conclusion of each and every USC home and away football game, WeAreSC brings you 5 things: a timely game analysis from moderator and WeAreSC editor-in-chief Eric McKinney, along with columnists Mark Culkin and Greg Katz. All right, here we go. This is kind of a unique question. It didn't come to fruition, but it certainly was out there. Panel, Saturday's game against UCLA was obviously the last regular season USC game played in 2023. Were you kind of surprised that on Saturday, neither Heisman Trophy winners Reggie Bush or Caleb Williams had their jerseys placed or not placed alongside the other USC Heisman Trophy winners in the peristyle end? Eric, did you think that at least one of the two would eventually be up on that peristyle end by the end of the season?
Not Caleb's, not while he was still playing. I think they would try to get him back at some point after he's done. Reggie Bush, I guess. I still think that they should. There was just there never seemed like momentum to have that done going into the games. I think they absolutely should. I think home opener next year, and it's maybe tough because wherever Caleb Williams is, that travel schedule with the NFL and all of that sort of thing, but home opener before a game, I think is when you do that. It would have been, I mean, could you imagine if they had done it for Caleb Williams ahead of that UCLA game and then USC did that against UCLA? That would have been rough. So I hope next year. I hope next year they do it.
Chris?
It makes no sense to me that Reggie's isn't up there. The truth is USC can retire any jerseys they want. I mean, we know that they retire only Heisman winners, but they can retire whatever jerseys they want. I mean, it's ridiculous that it's still not up there. And I don't, am I surprised? I don't know. I don't know who makes these decisions and what they consider, but it seems like an absolute no-brainer, especially in a year where the fans are a little bit disgruntled. Why don't you throw us a bone and throw Reggie's jersey up there? We'll be happy for a few minutes. Seems like a dumb missed opportunity.
Mark?
USC does a lot of dumb missed opportunity stuff. They can't seem to get out of their own way sometimes. Look, at the beginning of the season, I saw the renderings. I know that they were ready to do something. They cleared the space. If you've been to the Coliseum this year, you see where they're going to put it. USC has already been reestablished with USC. He's been there on campus. He's been in the locker room. He's been a part of the program. I don't know why they're waiting so long. I'm going to assume that something might have happened when Reggie put another defamation lawsuit together this, late in the summer against the NCAA. So maybe USC is just afraid of their own shadow. I have no idea why they're not doing this, but I agree with you. I agree with Chris. Put it up. What's the NCAA going to do? Sanction you? Of course not. I agree with Chris not shaking his head no. It makes no sense. It's almost like USC goes out of their way to say, let's see who we can piss off today.
Unfortunately, I think you're right, Mark. My feeling on it is, I'm pretty well on record about Bush, but at this point in time, his jersey should go up there. The fact that he doesn't have the actual trophy in his living room, that's to be worked out later. But at this point in time, if he's reinstated by the university, okay, I can just say go ahead and do it. I do think that Caleb Williams should have had his jersey up there because I don't think he's going to be with USC next year, in my opinion. And I think it would have been a nice thing to put up there as a tribute to him at the time. I would have said the same thing about Matt Leinart. Once you win it, you should be up there. I'm not even concerned about retiring the jersey. I could care less. But if you're going to honor them in that way, the year that they win it, as soon as the season's over, put it up there. I mean, obviously, if you go by that, they should have put it up there by the first game against this season, but they elected not to do that. So I was a little disappointed that it didn't happen, to be honest with you, for both players. So again, we strongly encourage those of you watching Inside the Trojans Huddle on sites like YouTube to click on the like and red subscriber buttons. It's greatly valued and appreciated. It's free. And you can also listen to Inside the Trojans Huddle on many available podcast sites. And be sure to check out WeAreSC.com and become a premium subscriber. All right. Third quarter, lightning round predictions. Here we go. It's time for the Big Ten lightning round. Panel, respond to the following 10 questions with quick responses. We'll go in this order: Mark, Eric, Chris, and myself. Here we go. Question 1. Yes or no, Caleb Williams has played his last game as a Trojan. Mark.
Yes.
Eric.
Yep.
Chris.
Pretty sure.
I agree. He's gone. Question 2. Yes or no, Caleb Williams will be invited to the Heisman Awards ceremony in New York. Mark.
No.
Eric.
No.
Chris.
Yeah, of course. He's a former Heisman.
Well,
winner.
all right. I was
here we
going to
go.
jump in before Chris got
How's
that.
Gotcha.
He will not be one of the finalists, I think was the question.
That's all right. I agree. So Chris, you said he will be invited. Yes.
He's going to be invited because he won it before. He's not going to be in the top 4 or 5 this year.
The question again, if you say that, will he actually go? That's a question that we'll have to see. But down the line, I would say initially, I would say no, he won't be invited as a candidate to win it again. Question 3, yes or no, aside from Caleb Williams' decision to potentially not play in USC's bowl game, will there be other players on the current roster who will not play in the bowl game? Mark?
There will be other players who will not be playing in the bowl game.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris?
Yep. Probably
And
quite a few.
I agree. Question 4, yes or no, Lincoln Riley will name his defensive coordinator before the Trojans bowl opponent is announced on December 3rd. Mark?
Yes.
Eric?
Think so.
Chris?
Yeah, you better.
Yeah, I agree. Could be at the end of this week. We'll see. Question 5, yes or no, Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix? Mark?
Penix.
Eric?
I think this year, Knicks.
Chris?
Are we choosing who's the better player? Is that what we're doing?
I think you could safely interpret it that way.
Okay. Bo Nix.
Okay. I'm going to go with Knicks. Question 6, yes or no, Chip Kelly will be the head coach of UCLA in 2024. Mark?
No.
Eric?
No.
Chris?
I'm going to put in a vote for the Chipster. I think he hangs in there for one more year.
I'm going out on a limb here because I've heard both sides and reasonable sides. I'm going to say yes. One more year. Question 7, yes or no, Lincoln Riley will go into the transfer portal for a quarterback. Mark?
Can I answer this after the bowl game?
Just take the question for what it is. It's not a trick question.
No.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, because it's yes or no, I think it's slightly leaning towards yes.
Okay, Chris?
I feel the same way as Eric. It's not obvious to me because we have no idea how these guys are doing in practice, but there's not a lot of depth there. So I think he's going to get a guy.
Okay, and I think he will go into the transfer portal. I think a lot on the line is on the line next season for Lincoln Riley as the head coach at USC. He's going to do everything he can to turn everything around no matter what it takes. Question 8, yes or no, USC will raise season ticket prices in 2024. Mark?
They do it every year. Why would they stop now?
Eric?
Yeah, exactly that, right? Why charge people the same when you can charge them more?
It's 2024. Let's take a break.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe bet.
I agree. Question 9, yes or no? USC should decline a bowl bid. After all, Lincoln Riley's bowl game record is 1-4. Basically, you want to take a chance on a bowl game. Do they deserve to go to a bowl game? Mark, yes or no? Should they decline it?
This is not even a real question. Let's go to the next question.
Mark, yes or no?
Oh, they shouldn't decline it. Come on, Greg.
Oh, it's so tenderizing when you get upset at me. Eric.
No. What, like if Lincoln Riley goes 1-5, he doesn't get to coach anymore for the rest of his career? No. You get your practices, you play the young guys, you go.
Chris.
Yeah, you need that work. You need the practices. And I'm assuming Lincoln Riley will actually use all of his, but I guess we don't know.
There's no limit. There's no limit to bowl practices. You can practice as much as you want. You have to stay within the NCAA, however much contact and time and all that stuff. But the 15 practice maximum or whatever is not real. So yeah, if they can go as much as they want.
Didn't Clay Helton use that?
2-a-days for 2 weeks straight, a day after Thanksgiving.
I'm gonna on this question. I think they should go to a bowl game, and there's a lot of conjecture that it's going to be the LA Bowl against maybe UNLV, but I know a lot of those players on those teams would love the chance to play at the SoFi Stadium, and you know what? If that's a motivation and it's exciting for them, go do it. All right.
I'm getting my LA Bowl Gronk nachos out of a bathtub. That was my call earlier this year. We're doing it.
First of all, anybody in the room have their bingo card to say UNLV in a bowl game, let alone USC playing UNLV in a bowl game?
Look, I hate it when USC plays teams like UNLV in a bowl game because it means that USC is not good and isn't interested, and UNLV is sky high. It's always a bad setup.
And Barry Odom has done well this year there.
He has done it. Former Arkansas guy, and the key here is I was checking their website for attendance. They average about 20,000 fans. So if you would they even bring 20,000 fans? I don't know, but I know SC fans won't be exactly doing somersaults over going to the LA Bowl. So attendance could be a real interesting issue on that one. All right, question 10, the bonus question. Guys, where will you be spending your Thanksgiving this Thursday? Mark.
In Arizona.
Is it just a gathering or just being in Arizona?
Just being in Arizona.
Okay. Eric?
Altadena, but honestly, knowing USC, probably in front of my laptop, writing about the new defensive coordinator hire as they announce it at about 5:00 on Thursday afternoon, evening.
Wouldn't that be something else? Chris?
I'll be in Fort Worth, Texas. My parents' house.
Okay. And I will be going down to San Clemente for the family gathering with provided by my sister, which is always a lot of fun. Half the people are USC fans. Some of them are, the other half is UCLA fans. And it will get down to this game. I'm already getting texts about ha 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 on the loss by SC. So it should be interesting in person to see all these people.
I got a text message from somebody's wife who I have not spoken to in 25 years.
Yeah.
With like, what happened? That was the text message. What happened?
Well, pull old Howard Cosell. You saw it. What do you think?
I mean, I got one from a UCLA fan that wasn't gloating at all. Just like, is everybody okay? I feel bad for you, which is worse. I mean, that's so much worse.
Pretty bad. The funeral procession, the text funeral procession. All right, go ahead.
Even Sooner fans are showing a little bit of pity right now.
Don't need it. Don't need it from them.
No.
Well, there is some rumor that SC could still play Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. Would that fire you guys up?
If it happens, I'll be there, but it's not happening.
Okay. All right. Let's head into the fourth quarter of the huddle. We do what we normally do. We're going to light our symbolic Coliseum torch, as they do at every home game in the Coliseum between the third and fourth quarter. Again, a reminder as the torch burns to all of you recruitaholics Don't forget to watch WeAreSC's weekly recruiting video show, Recruiting Roundup, with nationally respected Scott Schrader, the best in the business, and host Dylan Brazier. And a reminder as well to watch Friday's 4 Down show with moderator Eric McKinney and myself, bringing you the latest information on USC, all things USC, and sponsored by Prize Picks. So we go to the third quarter questions and panel answers. Excuse me. Yes. Questions and panel answers. Fourth quarter, I should say. Viewer and listener questions. We're going to try to get to all of them. Some of them may have already been answered. We're going to move on, but we'll give you credit and appreciate you that you're writing into it. So let's start off with question 1 from Barack. The Trojans in he's from the Down Under, which I assume is Australia. Hi, panel. I'm a little bit down as I find USC stuck in a really bad corner. Here's my thinking. At the moment, Lincoln Riley still has 8 more years in his contract, and that, I believe, $88+ million. It is much cheaper to pay and get a great defensive coach and pay a good NIL money to every athlete than go any other route. But what does Jen Cohen have as any leverage to get Lincoln Riley to change? I feel like the first Utah loss in 2022 was a turning point, and since then, the team slowly regressed. Normally, an AD can have a talk and assist a head coach with the direction of the program, but does that still work when the head coach has 8 more years guaranteed on his contract? Does the team basically, and I assume it's the program, do what Lincoln Riley wants to, or does Jen Cohen have any input into this? Thoughts?
He's his boss. I mean, she can tell him, I have some ideas. Whether or not Lincoln Riley agrees with those ideas, that's the fork in the road. But she will definitely have some input in the situation. Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Chris Peterson at Washington said he used her as a sounding board all the time. I mean, that's a guy who knows plenty about football, and if he's got her kind of at that level, and it's not, hey, do we bring the blitz on this situation or whatever, but just in terms of personnel and fit and culture and all of that stuff, she's absolutely gonna have ideas, right? She talks about herself as the biggest fan out there of the program, so she's gonna offer, I think, any insight that she can and any help that she can in that regard.
All right. Question 2 from Trojans in the Valley. And I will say, don't underestimate her consulting Chris Peterson on anything that pertains to USC football, one way or the other. All right. Question 2 from the Trojan in the Valley. Panel, what an absolute mess and embarrassment. How and where does SC go from here? Lincoln Riley admitted he did a poor job this season, but do you think that Lincoln Riley has it in him to actually change? Is there a path to success next season? I think that what we have to look at this point is the question that we have is, and we've talked about this already. Do you think he can change?
That's the question, right? I mean, I don't think
can he change.
I don't think he's ever been in this situation where it truly is this bad and you have to make a U-turn. I think he always has kind of had, and we'll shuffle this a little bit and we'll tweak this a little bit. But in terms of him being the guy and having to answer all of this, maybe, hopefully, you always hear from coaches, you're at some point you're going to get humbled and you're going to have to really go dig deep and figure it out. And this is his chance to do that. It'll be fascinating to see, who does he talk to? Who does he go to? Obviously, Mike Leach was a big coaching inspiration, and that's not kind of a sounding board that you can go to. So who does he, if there's anybody that he kind of looks to and gets guidance from and figures out how to pull through this? But you hear about stories all the time where coaches really need to dig down and they get it figured out. I don't know if it's a slam dunk that it absolutely happens next year, but From everything that you hear kind of on the outside, that's the thought, is if this season didn't sort of humble him to where you build this ground up now in maybe a slightly different way, then it's not going to happen. So this offseason is huge.
Look, the truth is, when it comes to the offense, the problem offensively primarily was the offensive line. That's not the only problem, but if USC solves the offensive line problem, they're going to score plenty of points. They score a lot of points this year with an offensive line problem. So that's not really an issue. It's all about defense. And when it comes to the defense, what is it that Lincoln Riley is looking for? Because if you bring Alex Grinch back for the 5th year, you're looking for something different than I am. I know that. I mean, it's not like Alex Grinch was killing it every other year and then he had a down year. That guy was no good ever. He had one decent year at Oklahoma. Other than that, he's finishing in the 60s, right in the middle of the national rankings at best every single year. But Lincoln Riley thought, that's my guy. I mean, that's the fundamental problem I have, is I don't understand what he was even looking at. And yeah, he had to fire him. If he goes out and hires some of the names that have been bandied about, USC's probably going to be better defensively, right? Because some of those guys can really coach. And anybody can hire those, right? Any fan off the street can say, oh, I'd kind of like to hire Jim Leonard. Yeah, I mean, we all would. And maybe Lincoln Riley gets him and then everything's great. But I don't get it, man. I don't understand what he was thinking. It doesn't make any sense to me. And because of that, I have no idea what he's thinking right now. Hopefully something different, because what he thought last year, that's the wrong thing. We need to stop thinking that way.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. Maybe I shouldn't say I don't have confidence in Lincoln Riley. I question his ability when it comes to hiring people on his coaching staff. What will be fascinating to me is who does he actually replace on either side of the ball, because that'll be an indication of what he thinks was the problem. We might be surprised at who doesn't come back, and there's always a chance that there's guys on the coaching staff who say, you know what, I better move on before it really gets hot. I can see the storm clouds on the way for me personally in terms of coaching here. So we'll see. All right, question 3 from Gupo and Palanca. Hi, panel. No doubt we are the worst of the 4 teams joining the Big Ten next year. Without another generational talent like Caleb Williams, the future of the program looks bleak. With regard to SC football, do you esteemed gentlemen see anything to pin your hopes on, anything to feel good about? And then they add a quote from Ernest Hemingway. How did USC football get so bad? Bill asked. 2 ways, Mike said. Gradually and then suddenly. So how do you feel about it?
I didn't know Hemingway was so down on USC football. That's disappointing.
I just read it. I don't make it up.
Huh.
So do you think that there are things that people could feel good about?
Bear Alexander has to come back.
All right, there's one.
How about the 4 freshman receivers? Coming back. Those kids are fantastic. You have young linemen who are going to get more experience. I think some of those guys are talented. And it's true, Caleb Williams was a generational talent, but Caleb Williams had to play like a generational talent because he had to run around all the time. If USC played better on the offensive line, Lincoln Riley scores lots of points with guys who aren't generational talents. I guess he never has a quarterback that's not pretty good. They're all guys that go high, but he doesn't have to have Caleb Williams to score points, but he needs somebody to block somebody.
See, Chris, and that's the point I was going to bring up. We don't know who Lincoln Riley is until we see him without a generational quarterback who's winning the Heisman. That's what we know what his offense is. He's got a really good quarterback. Eric, you alluded to it earlier. What does he do when he just has to put an identity on his offense, on his defense, and not say, that's the guy. We're the number 1 scoring offense.
Well, his identity has been build a really good offensive line and run over people. I mean, that's what he has done a lot of throughout his career. And those, I'm going to say misses, because what you expected to get from that offensive line is clearly not what you got this season. And they're talking 11 games in. Yeah, we got to figure this out. And Josh Henson said that kind of laughing and rolling his eye a little bit. Like, he knew this was not the plan to be at this point in the season without gelling and having all this stuff together. I want to hit that Caleb Williams thing for me. Do you know how many teams won national championships without Caleb Williams at quarterback? All of them. So does he make it easier to win a championship? Yes. Is he a prerequisite to winning one? No. I think that if he is gone, you don't automatically get better. But I think if your offensive line gets pieced together, you talked about the wide receivers, there's a couple pretty good running backs coming back, and you have pieces around there to be a fine offense, to be an offense that can win you a national championship. This year's offense was good enough to get you to the Pac-12 championship game. The defense was not close. Like that's what you have to have when you talk about a quarterback that can win you a national championship. Most times it's because when he's sitting on the bench, the guys still playing on the field are pretty good. And so I think that goes to all the way back to the transfer portal quarterback thing, talking about Miller Moss's development, Malachi Nelson. Lincoln Riley coaches number 1 pick, first round Heisman Trophy caliber quarterbacks. If he doesn't have one of those on the field next year, that'll be the first time for him. So at this point, you kind of bet on he'll figure that position out and put a guy out there who's pretty good.
All right, so let's move on here. Question 4 from Blade Runner from Tejas. Will CLR, Coach Lincoln Riley, focus on developing 4-year linemen instead of relying on transfers? The coaching staff should focus on teaching instead of recruiting rankings. Comments?
Well, we would like them to, but when you go through this type of season, you kind of, like I said, you take a step forward in 2022. You're trying to set it up so you can, recruit and develop your own high school offensive linemen. But this is what happens in 2023, and it kind of just it sets you have to go back to the drawing board. So they would like to, but are you willing to go into the 2024 season with 4 or 5 redshirt freshmen as your offensive linemen? Because that's really what you get to choose from.
But that's the key, though, right? You have those. Like when you talk about, are they going to recruit linemen?
But are you going to start against
LSU? And they are recruiting linemen
with those guys, or are you going to go try and find another Jarrett Kingston and a Michael Tarquin and Emmanuel Prignon, and not try and break their habits, but put them in a position where they feel comfortable? That I wanted to go back to what you were talking about earlier. That's why I bring that up. They have the guys, but instead of trying to break bad habits and put a round hole, a round piece into a square hole, put the round peg where the round peg belongs. Put the square peg where the square peg belongs.
I agree with that up to an extent, but offensive line is a real process. And usually, you want them to be at earliest sophomores, right? Used to everything, and to keep plugging in players for 1 year and they're gone through the transfer portal. If you're lucky, you get somebody that's 2 years, and you're lucky if you get someone 2 years and actually is a quality lineman. And I've been watching it, as many of you have, that they have lost too many elite offensive linemen coming out of high school. It's a credibility issue. We'll see how it works. We'll even see if there's a new offensive line coach next year, maybe.
But how many linemen should they sign in a year? They signed 5 really good offensive linemen last year. They got 4 committed this year. Like, they are hitting high school offensive linemen. If a kid says, I want $200,000, or I'm throwing a number out. If a kid says, I want a ton of money, and USC's not going to do that, no amount of winning and recruiting and all of that in the world is going to get him there. So you go get the guys that you think are the best that you can get. They've got a top 100 offensive lineman in this class. They got another 4-star guy from Texas. This is going to be nine signees in 2 classes. You go back and look at that 2021 class, the 2022 that was like a short class that they couldn't really fill in on. I like where they're going offensively. You're right, Greg. You got to get the best guys in the area. You have to. How you can do that now is a little bit different than how you used to be able to do that. But the plan long term doesn't look to be, let's sign 4 transfer portal guys every year for 1 year and plug them in. It feels like they are doing what they can to recruit on the lines. In the 2023 class, 5 guys who play on the defensive line, 5 guys who play on the offensive line. Those are big numbers in terms of what you're adding to a roster.
You know, I agree with you as far as NIL payment for offensive linemen. I get it. I understand it. But you know what? You still have to try to change your philosophy. You know, I know that Scott Schrader was telling me this is an issue in recruiting. And maybe they're going to have to, whether they like it or not. But I can tell you one thing, there's nothing worse than losing out to a player that's, let's say, a 4 or 5 star offensive lineman from our area and ending up playing against them. In other words, playing against somebody who went to Ohio State and now they're playing against us. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. I don't get so excited about numbers of players they recruit. It's the quality that they get when they sign them. Question number 5 from SC, the one in the OC. Will a new DC be announced by the airing of this episode? Will a new DC be announced before the transfer portal opens on 12/4? I think we've answered that one, but thank you.
Breaking news.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Da-na-na-na.
Kidding. Could you imagine us being able to do that while we're recording?
You know, that's okay. Are you teasing us?
Yeah, no, because it's not live. So then I gotta start hitting both things at the same time.
All right. Okay.
That's the one.
Okay, folks. You'll all appreciate
right now. There's no DC.
Who's that?
We're recording the show right now. There is no defensive coordinator.
Okay, that's the point.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the point. You know. All right. Question 6 from EB Duzit in DTLA, which I assume is downtown Los Angeles. Hi, panel. Can USC compete in this current NIL environment? How can we get back to competing for conference championships and national championships? I think we kind of touched on this just now in terms of NIL money going to offensive linemen. Anyone want to add to this at all?
I would tell EB does it to jump into that 50 for whatever that House of Victory is running.
Right on.
Help him out. Get him closer.
Hey, I donated it, Mark. I just wanted you to know. I was sufficiently moved by our offensive line's performance that I decided I should give them some money. I don't know if it'll go to a lineman or not. We'll see.
Everybody moved USC's offensive lineman this year. So
Question 7 from Jim, I guess JM-641 in the Midwest. Can the panel please offer an explanation of Riley's infatuation with quick passes that get to the receiver less than 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage? These lateral plays seem to have been a larger portion of throws this year, and I'm not sure they can be attributed to not having Jordan Addison or helping offset the abysmal offensive line. There must be something else, but sadly, every defense we play sniffs them out almost immediately, and we need to rely on strong blocks in the flat for any success. See Lake McCree, Taj on the critical 4th down on Saturday. Thanks and best wishes to each of you for a happy Thanksgiving, and a special happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Jim 41 in the Midwest. Guys, comments?
That's an extension of the run game, right? If you're not running the ball very well, you can at least complete those passes into the flats. And he's right that it relies on strong blocks in the flat, just like your running game otherwise depends on good blocking. And what you're seeing a lot is you're seeing opposing defenses play very aggressively against USC up there, and which seems strange because you'd think they'd be worried about Caleb Williams throwing the ball downfield. But I think their perspective is you take away the short stuff, and then you put pressure on Caleb Williams, and he's going to hit you for some big plays from time to time. but he's also going to get some 13-yard sacks and some holding penalties, and then the offensive series falls apart. So I think that's what you're seeing. And, it's frustrating to watch 2-yard losses on those plays all the time. But at the same time, if you can't run the ball, that at least forces the defense to respect the line of scrimmage. But you need to block it better if you're going to do it.
That was the key, is that there were big chunks of time this year where USC's wide receivers could not block that. That wide receiver screen game was terrible. When it's going well, USC is throwing for tons of yards because they have 250 yards after the catch in every game. You saw that against Colorado. There were some games this year where they were really good with that. The other thing it does, and Lincoln Riley talks about it on the flip side when he talks about USC's defense, where you have to commit a certain number of players into the box to stop the run. The problem is teams could do that with 5 guys this year against USC's running game at times. They could get everything done with just those 4 guys, which left plenty of guys to be able to stick out there on the outside. So USC was kind of at a numbers disadvantage on that quick throw. Teams didn't really respect the play action on the handoff to stay on the inside. They kind of flew out knowing their defensive line could get the USC offensive line handled. I mean, we're all talking about the same thing, right? At the end of the day, play really good up front with your offensive line and everything opens up. And you can kind of do whatever you want if you have a really good offensive line.
I haven't gone back to look at, when this play is called. It would seem it was always on short yardage situations. Other teams,
there's a lot of 1st and 10 play calling for that. But look, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, those plays are effective. Teams run that against USC secondary, and it works pretty effectively. Because if your secondary doesn't tackle, then throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage and the flats usually results in about 15 yards or so. So it's not that it's a bad call.
You usually want to create a numbers advantage, and when USC runs it, it's like they're running against their own numbers. Sometimes there's less blockers and more defenders. So I don't know. Again, it's their version of the toss sweep, I guess.
All right. Final question, 8 from Redondo Beach, SC. Would love to hear your thoughts on Lincoln Riley's performance the farther he's removed from a Bob Stoops roster. Lincoln's only competitive playoff appearance was year 1. Everything since has been a blowout. We're now at an all-time low with the exception of a turnover anomaly in 2022. Is Lincoln a head coach or an offensive coordinator? Comments?
I think we're going to find out if he's a head coach this offseason.
Yeah,
We've been
I think that's right.
throughout the show, bits and pieces. So, like I said, he's not on the hot seat. It's warm.
I think he's at a crossroads. I think he knows it. I think he knows his career's on the line. My recommendation is, and which will mean nothing to Lincoln Riley, but Lincoln.
Don't sell yourself short, Greg.
I will try not to do that. I know you'll correct me. Lincoln, don't think about the NFL right now. You need to prove what you can do in college and go from there and resurrect your credibility and see if you can hire a good defensive coordinator, live for each season as it comes. This idea that, we'll get it done here in 2 or 3 years at SC, and then I'll move on to the NFL. Forget about that right now. You need to restore your credibility, my friend. All right. A reminder again, if you have a question or comments for our panel, go to the WeAreSC members message board, click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle, viewer or listener questions. All right. We're in overtime. Pac-12, week number 12, game predictions. Panel, it's overtime. Time for you to predict the winners from the Pac-12 games in action and a couple of one non-conference game and one very significant national game. We'll go in the order of Chris, Mark, Eric, and Greg. Let's start off. We have a Friday night Pac-12 game, November 24th. Number 15, Oregon State at number 6, Oregon, 5:30 p.m. Fox. Oregon is a 14-point favorite. Who wins it, Chris Arledge?
I'd love for Oregon State to win, but Oregon's at home, and I think that's a top 4 that may be a top 2 team right now. They're really good. So I think Oregon wins pretty easily.
Oh, Mark, are they going to win, and are they going to win easily?
It won't be easy. It's still a civil war. It's still a rivalry game. Oregon State still plays decent defense, better than decent defense. So it won't be easy. I disagree with Chris on that part.
Okay, so you are picking.
Someone in the state of Oregon will win this game.
Oh, good. Way to go out.
Colton was picking a fight with me right there. Did you hear that? He didn't just.
I didn't want to get into it. I wanted to just remain neutral and move on.
I just don't think
Maybe
it's
we
going
have
to be
to
the
settle
blow
this
up.
thing.
Okay, I'm just saying you didn't just pick. You had to actually point me out.
I disagree. You were the first to go.
He called you out. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I'm a Kyle Lemon. You're Kyle Ford. How's that?
I don't know what that means.
They got into a little tussle and they bro hugged afterwards.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
Well, speaking of,
I don't either, but there you go.
McKinney.
So, Mark, you're. Well, first of all, I want to make sure, Mark, we got your pick. You are picking
Oregon
on
slightly.
this one.
Oregon slightly.
Uh-oh.
Oh, here we go.
I'm taking
Finish
over.
You got
McKinney,
so close.
who do you got? Oregon State.
Could you imagine having to play Washington at home and then on the road at Oregon in back-to-back weeks? That's going to be rough for Oregon State.
That sounds like
I-
an Oregon prediction for you.
I think Oregon pretty big.
Okay,
You
Vic, so
imagine
you disagree with Culkin. Hey, Culkin, I'm the host now.
I
All
was
right,
gonna
let's
say,
move on to Colorado at Utah. Utah is a 21.5-point favorite. Chris, what do you think? I think Utah big because Colorado's not very good. Mark,
I agree with Chris on this one.
good. That's wise. Eric, what do you think? Utah big?
I'm curious if Colorado shows up for this one. They may just kind of wash their hands of the season. So yeah, Utah by what's a forfeit 2-0? 2-0.
So you think they'll actually leave the buses at home?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
There's a
so
chance.
Utah inter-squad game, 12 o'clock p.m., Pac-12 networks. Let's go to number 16, Arizona at ASU. Arizona is a 12.5-point favorite on the road. Chris, what do you think? I think Arizona's a pretty good football team. I think Greg Katz has disappeared and will no longer be a part of this program. We're going to look for another host. This is what we're going to do. If you want to host this show,
You still with me?
Send in an email.
Chris,
with
did
your
you sabotage me?
Oh, no. Yeah, I fired you, actually. We're replacing you. I'm picking Arizona over Arizona State, Greg. I think Arizona is a much better football team. It's now Mark's turn.
Arizona's gonna win this game.
Eric, go ahead.
Are we giving Greg a chance to get back in?
Mark, are you there?
I saw Jed Fish say Arizona is technically the Pac-12 South champs this year, which doesn't mean anything this year, but that's impressive from
He's
that
done a
group.
nice job, right? That program plays hard. They're disciplined. They run the toss sweep over and over and over again. If you fail to defend it, they do everything that you're supposed to do.
Except know when to go for 2.
Well,
Yes.
yeah. No, I mean, I would have gone for 2 also. USC hadn't stopped the play with their defense all year. So that seemed like just because it doesn't work.
No, they didn't go, right? Arizona didn't go early when they could have ended
earlier.
it.
Yeah. You should always go for 2 against USC's defense. Washington State at number 4, Washington. Washington is only a 16-point favorite. Surprises me a little bit. I think Washington wins this one. I think they win it pretty big. Washington State has sort of fallen off the map recently. At least I think they have. Or maybe I just have stopped looking at Washington State scores and I don't know.
Well, Colorado left about 5 minutes into the game against them, which is why I don't think they'll show up against Utah. I think they've gone out for the winter. They're out of Boulder at this point. But big win against Colorado for the Cougs.
That's a dangerous thing to do because Coach Prime likes to replace his entire roster every year. So if you want to be one of the 2 or 3 holdovers, you got to play hard. All right, Polkin, Washington State at Washington.
Huskies.
That sounds right. Eric, you're going to the Huskies here?
I think so. Although, I mean, can we root to send the Pac-12 out with just a bus crash at the end where Washington loses and then beats Oregon and they're not in the playoff as a conference again?
So that was metaphorically speaking a bus crash.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Look, I'm excited that all three of us thought that Washington State would not pull an upset over a top 4 Washington team on the road. If so, we should get fired the way Greg has been fired. Let's go to Cal at UCLA. UCLA is a 10-point favorite against the Bears. Bears against Bears, blue against blue. What do you got? I think the UCLA Bruins win this one. But it wouldn't surprise me if they have a little bit of a letdown after the USC game. And let's remember, you may not have noticed last week because UCLA was playing against USC's defense. But UCLA has trouble scoring points. That is not a good offensive football team. So I could see Cal keeping that close. And you know what? I'm changing my prediction. I like the Cal Bears by a field goal in overtime to beat the Bruins. And therefore, I have to revise my earlier prediction. Chip Kelly will be fired. Okay, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. Because of what you just said, if this is a letdown game for the baby school, Cal wins.
Can you imagine the UCLA writers having to trace the butterfly effect of Greg's internet going out to Chip Kelly getting fired at the end of this year? I mean, just incredible turn of events.
Chip Kelly recruited better when he had those Oregon bagmen working for him, right? He seemed to actually pull some guys out that you'd never heard of, but they were super fast and shifty. Now he gets to UCLA. He only recruits out of the transfer portal, but that's still enough one time a year. Okay, a Pac-12 non-conference game. Oh, I understand what he's trying to say. Number 17, Notre Dame at their rival, the Stanford Cardinal. Notre Dame is a 24.5-point favorite. I assume that's for the first half. What do I think is going to happen? I think Notre Dame is going to massacre Stanford. It's going to be ugly, and no one's going to want to watch it.
You know what? Nobody has to watch it because it's on Pac-12 Network.
I was going to say,
I love it that Notre Dame is on the Pac-12 networks.
Finishing their year.
That's crazy.
Mark Colkin.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
You going Stanford?
Notre Dame, and no one will see it.
So Colkin is going with Stanford. How about you, McKinney? Notre Dame or Stanford?
I think Notre Dame is going to go up to Utah and fill in for Colorado and make that a bit of a better watch. Also on Pac-12 Network against Utah.
Then we can see the Colorado-Stanford game again, which actually was my favorite Colorado game of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So everybody is picking Notre Dame except for Colkin. Let's go to the national game of the week. Number 2, Ohio State. At number 3, Michigan. They're in the big house. They're playing at 9:00 a.m. Michigan is a 4-point favorite in this one. I understand that Michigan's at home. I think Ohio State's a better football team. I think they've improved as the year's gone on. Defensively, I think they match up well with Michigan. And I actually think I like Ohio State's receivers. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes in an upset at the big house, dropping Michigan out of playoff contention. What say you, Mark Holkin?
I'm going with Michigan because anytime you can play an entire half of a game without throwing a pass and win, you know who you are. You know what you have to do. You can win a tight, close, physical football game.
I think they're going to throw the ball against Ohio State, but Colkin says Michigan still not throwing passes even in the rivalry game. Eric McKinney, what do you say?
So I've picked a tie 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, you got both of those wrong. Are you doing it again?
I was slightly off. No, I'm not. I'm saying I'm not going to. I hadn't done it yet this way, although I did switch opponents in 2 games. I think Michigan in this one. I'm nervous because they've played 1 game this year, and they're gonna have to play this one without their coach. And ever since that sign stealing thing, I think they've given up kind of more and more points. But the defense is
why that is.
The defense is still good, and
Well, why
I
are
think
you
they get it
nervous?
done.
Are you nervous because you're a Michigan fan, or are you saying you're nervous for the validity?
I'm not. You know, I hate being wrong on these things. I
I don't know. You're wrong
review
all the time.
this.
You keep picking ties.
I'm that's what I'm nervous about. I'm nervous that I might get one of these wrong.
Yeah, you
And I don't want to do
will.
that.
You probably will. All right, let's do the closing. I'm going to go ahead and read us out of here. That will do it for Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A reminder to watch 4 Downs on Friday for the latest in USC and college football presented by Prize Picks. Chris Arledge is not a part of that program. You should still watch anyway, I think. So until next Tuesday, when we review the USC regular season, I think we already did that. I don't know what he's talking about. A look towards the bowl season, a new Big Ten lightning round, and all things USC football. A big thank you again to our panelists, Mark Culkin, Eric McKinney, the now fired Greg Katz, and me, your new host, at least for 1 week, Chris Arledge. Fight on, everybody.